There are a lot of characteristics of effective leaders, but I really focus in on two that I think make the biggest difference. First, I think to be really effective, you have to be transparent. You have to be an effective communicator. You've got to regularly communicate and keep the folks you're leading in on what's going on and make them part of what you're doing. And second, you have to be really candid to be transparent. And that means be honest, obviously, but it also means you need to acknowledge when you don't know something and when you need help and you need assistance. And I think you also really need to be candid about when others deserve credit, but when you need to accept responsibility for something that's gone wrong. Second, I think a person has to be authentic to be an effective leader. And I think there's two parts to that. One is it's very simple, just be real, be who you are. But being real also means that you say what you mean. So you can be positive, you can compliment people, but do it when it means something. If you're constantly complimenting someone, you lose the power of those words. So mean what you say and say it when you really mean it. By the same token, you need to be willing to say the hard things. There are times that leaders need to say hard things, and that's part of being authentic. But the other bigger part of authenticity is be vulnerable. Share when you don't know, as I mentioned already. Share about yourself. People will trust you if you are vulnerable. And I think the most effective leaders are both authentic and they're vulnerable. In terms of what leaders should avoid to be effective, I think it's the reverse of what I mentioned in terms of authenticity and transparency. I think that when there's a lack of candor, when someone doesn't accept responsibility, when someone is inconsistent, when somebody spins things, then you lose trust. You're not being authentic, you're not being honest, you're not being transparent. The minute you lose trust in the folks you're trying to lead, it's all over. You're done. In terms of the biggest leadership challenge I've ever faced, I've got to say it was COVID. COVID presented everyone with an enormous amount of uncertainty. I believe that leaders have to be positive and hopeful. You know, I think it's Napoleon that once said, leaders deal in hope. Well, when you're faced with as much uncertainty as we were faced with COVID, particularly in the beginning of the pandemic, it was hard to be hopeful. It was hard to be positive. And without that, it was a real challenge to lead and to bring everybody together. It took me a while, but what I learned to do was just share my own fear, share my own uncertainty, and to then point out the positive, be hopeful, but be hopeful by saying we were going to make it if we all work together. But that has been the biggest challenge I've faced, and I learned so much from that. In terms of what I did to prepare for my role as a leader, this may sound funny, but I failed. When I learned most, we all do, we learn most from failure. And whenever I was unable to accomplish what I hoped to accomplish for the group or a responsibility that I had, that's when I learned the most. Because when I succeeded at something, or when the group succeeded at something, when we were successful, we moved on to the next challenge. When we failed, or when I failed, it helped me learn, as long as I stopped and assessed, as long as I asked people what we could have done differently, as long as I listened to what they had to say about what we could have done differently, and then I used those lessons to move forward and hopefully do a better job the next time around. What do I look for in future leaders? You know, I truly believe in servant leadership. So I think I look first to see if someone is engaged in service. If service is what they're really about, if they're more about service than they are about leading, then I think they're going to be an effective leader. And then I just look to see, are they committed and do they care? If they're committed, they care and can demonstrate that care and compassion, they're going to be an effective leader. One of the things that I do more than anything else now is really observe other leaders. I've learned to be more reflective about that. I watch what they do. I learn from other leaders so much, both their successes and when things don't work as well. So I observe. I also listen. I try and listen very carefully to how people respond to me and how they respond to other leaders. And then I just reflect on it. I try and think, okay, what have I learned from that? And if I am able to do that and then kind of build on what I've learned, I think I'll keep improving. I sure hope I do. I need to.